Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, a card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And before we track right on into the card today, we are going to spend just a second or two talking about ways that you can hang out with Card Talk. Of course, we have the podcast and the YouTube videos that come out every week. That's how you're enjoying us now. But we also have a blog, cardtalk2018.com. Matt, Cat Attack 22 is his screen name. He keeps up with every card that we review at the pod over at the blog. And so if you prefer to read, or if you want another perspective on a card, different things that we may not think about, different uses, things like that, check out that. We also have a play series where Micah plays a scenario every other week, and then has some deck building constrictions that he builds decks with and things like that. And so that's called Second Breakfast. So thanks to Micah, we bring you plays every other week. And then we have an email address. You can get a hold of any of us here if you have ideas or comments, or you just want to tell us what an awesome job that we're doing. You can see us you can email us at cardtalk2018.com. cardtalk2018@gmail.com. And then if you feel so inclined to help support the blog, keep the lights on here, or help support the blog, keep the lights on here at the pod, or you just like what we do to help out the community, you can join us at patreon.com/cardtalk2018. But Grant, what's the card we're talking about today?
Today we are going to do some tracking with the Northern Tracker.
I love this card.
The 4-cost spirit ally with 1 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, and 3 hit points, a Dunedain Ranger with response after Northern Tracker commits to the quest. Place 1 progress token on each location in the staging area. And with the flavor text, what roads would any dare to tread? What safety would there be in quiet lands or in the homes of simple men at night, if the Dunedain were asleep or were all gone into the grave? Aragorn, the Fellowship of the Ring.
Well, I could probably talk for this card about this card for like ever. So before I do that, why don't you talk about this card?
Very powerful, especially early on in the card pool, in the campaign life of the game, because there aren't many scenarios with immune locations, or locations that have immunity to player card effects. He's got a decent amount of hit points, so he's not going to be killed by 1 Necromancer's Reach. Sometimes the cost can be a little bit expensive, but on the whole, for what he brings to the table, I think it's a brilliant card, and he can fit into pretty much any deck with Spirit.
Yeah. I mean, this guy, I don't know what about him. Like, when I first got into the game, and I got into the game like April 2014, so I was 3 years, and then I was into the game, but then we didn't start Card Talk until 2018, right? So but I will tell you that from the beginning, I loved this card, and then I kind of stopped using it, not because of anything, but like 4 cost is tough when you're trying to explore how to build other decks and stuff, especially in Spirit. You can cheat it into play with maybe Elfstone or let's see, like what's
A good
what,
tail.
a very good tail, and then what's the other one? Timely aid, and then the side quest, send for aid. So yeah, like there's ways to cheat this guy into play, and at 4 cost you may need that because spirit always seems to be the sphere that needs lots of resources to do its thing. Like it's canceling and it's doing all sorts of good stuff. But this ally in spirit is like the ally that you want to have. It's not unique, so you can bring 3 of these things out. And it's like you said, it's like has 3 hit points, so it's not susceptible to, it's strong, it's powerful. The one thing that I think the veterans or the observant players can tell that this was designed in the core set is because it's a 1 willpower ally, and so you want it to be committing to the quest, and so normally if it's supposed to be this like questy guy later on, I think that they would have done something a little bit different with the stat distribution. But I mean, using the normal formula, add up its stats and its stats and its hit points and divide by 2, and that's its cost. Like that 4 cost is fair just if it were a vanilla spirit ally. But the fact that you can get to put 1 progress on each location, I think that that's just crazy. Each location in the staging area. And, when you're playing multiplayer, so Con of the Rings, well, by the time this airs, Con of the Rings will have just passed, but Lure of the Middle Earth is coming up in February. So, if you're playing multiplayer, there's probably somebody who's going to play like a spirit or spirit lore support deck, and they should always put Northern Tracker in it because revealing 3 or 4 cards around without surge, and then if things surge, then you 5, maybe 6 cards around, there's going to be locations. You're going to have to deal with locations, and the Northern Tracker just makes dealing with locations super easy. The Northern Tracker here's the thing. Let's talk about like how this card is basically the way to get through locations in like Khazad-dûm. You're playing 4-player Khazad-dûm. Northern Tracker coming out. Like I just can't emphasize enough that this card, yes, like Grant said, there's not a ton of immune to player card effects, but there's no scenario where every location is immune, and there's no scenario. There are some scenarios where you can't place progress on locations in the staging area, or but still, like it's not half of them. It's a small number of locations that have negative effects if you place locations or don't allow you to place progress on there in the staging area. So the Northern Tracker is a beast and does a lot of heavy lifting from the very beginning from the game, and then couple that with cards that were released later, or if you just got into the game and you bought your core set, and then bought some starter decks. If you play Galadriel and you bring this card out, and Galadriel, this guy doesn't exhaust to commit to the quest, and then you can use his other stats the first round he comes into play, and that's pretty good. It's like this card is almost too. This card is like the Treebeard before Treebeard was created. Not really, because they both serve different purposes in the card pool, but like the Northern Tracker is a really good card. And there. I'm trying to think. Like, there's what is that card? Tale of Tenuvial, is that what it is? Where you can exhaust a Noldor to ready a Dunedain, and this guy is a Dunedain, and so you want to try to take advantage of those other stats, because his willpower is the weakest stat. So if you can ready this Northern Tracker to use his defense, let's say, and I think that Tale of Tenuvial adds the, let's see, it adds willpower to the other three stats, right? Like, so whatever the Noldor character's willpower is. So the point is that the Northern Tracker isn't just necessarily this ally that comes into play and all it does is put progress on a location. There are ways and easy ways to use his other stats during the game.
Well,
What's Valiant Determination? A character doesn't exhaust, an ally doesn't exhaust to commit to the quest. Like, that's pretty good. What were you going to say?
Sorry. You've also got things like Grim Resolve to ready. But even if you look at him from, say, another point of view, he doesn't necessarily belong in a Dunedain deck.
Oh, yeah.
He's good in a Woodsman's deck, or a deck that's primarily focused on location control. Obviously, Haldan, you want to get a lot of attachments on locations. And if you've got like 3 or 4 attachments across 3 locations in the staging area, and you've got a couple of Northern Trackers out, those locations are probably going to be explored very quick. And for his stat line, his stats aren't exactly the best for a quester. But I also think that in itself, in spirit, is actually very good to have a character that has differing better stat line than, say, if they put those 2 extra points off defense and attack into willpower and made him 3-1-1, he wouldn't be as hardy. So if you get an enemy engaged with you, or you know that there's an enemy going to be coming down to engage, you've got your way to defend or to attack back with the Northern Tracker. I mean, it may not be a lot of damage, but it's still something.
I think the intention, and I can't get into Nate's head, and Nate had developed this card, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. So I can't get into his head, but I think that the reason why things like this exist is to try to make you make a decision, and, is the decision to quest with him for one and put a bunch of progress on locations, or is the decision to keep him back so he can defend for you? And I think that is a noble intention. But I think that in practice, unless there's no locations in the staging area, people just quest with him automatically, and that's the thing. Now, it would be interesting to see if this thing was 1 attack and 3 defense. Now maybe the decision becomes a little more exciting, because now you're a really stout defender. But I still think that,
or the other way on, 1 willpower, 3 attack, 1 defense.
Right. But this guy's like hero stats. Hobbits aren't this hardy. Like, this is this guy. Obviously he's a weaker hero, or would be a weaker hero. But
he does have hero level stats. I mean, look at Fastred, who has 3-1-1. He's got 1-1-3-3. Right. But he lowers your threat and then bounces the enemy back to the staging area. Right. The Northern Tracker's on par with him for stats, if you were to reallocate his stat line slightly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the Northern Tracker was one of those cards that unintentionally changed the way that locations had to be designed.
Oh, definitely. Northern Tracker, Asphalot.
Yep.
Not so much the Lorien Guide, because the Lorien Guide targets the active location.
It's just
but
the active location, right?
cards that target multiple things in the staging area had to be rebalanced or redesigned because of the Northern Tracker.
Right. And I mean, this guy is not unique. So in a 4-player game, you could have 12 of these guys out and you could just be clearing locations, all the time and not have to worry about travel effects or anything. Like, not to say that 12 of them is what you're going to be doing, but I mean, it's possible. And then, the average, quest points of a location is like 4 maybe. So, you have 3 or 4 of these guys out. You're just clearing location after location after location. It's just very good. And there's other ways to use him without
what I would have liked
solely using him as a quester.
Yeah, what I would like to have seen was him get the scout trait as well.
Yeah, imagine that.
So then you could have used like scout compass on him.
Mm-hmm. Scouts, I don't know.
Mariner's compass.
Mariner's compass. Yeah. Yep.
And stuff like that. But he's still a very good ally. But his Dunedain trait doesn't actually lend him to the Dunedain archetype.
Right.
Which is the number of enemies engaged with you get X bonus.
Right, you can, although you can reduce his cost.
Yes, you can. So yes, you can. That's what I was just about to say. Era of Valandil can reduce Northern Tracker's cost.
Yeah.
Whether you put it in a Dunedain deck, though, I mean, I can sort of see the benefit for clearing locations, but generally speaking, you're going to be wanting to focus on more of the defense or attack power, not necessarily the questing side of things.
Right. Yeah, and you could put leather boots on this guy, and that way you can, if you reveal a location, there's lots of things you can do. The one thing that I will say from a rules standpoint is that the response says you have to place progress on each location in the staging area, so you can't pick and choose which locations. It's either all of them or none of them, unless something's immune to player artifacts. Yeah. But like, you can't, because there are some that give you like a negative effect if you once you put progress on them, or so you can't pick and choose. So you have to put them on all of them or none of them. But still,
it does actually sing in the Ringo South with all those locations that you need to clear from the staging area.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like we could just talk about this guy all day. He's one of my favorite. He may not make it into every deck, but he's one of my favorite core set cards.
Oh,
and I think
I agree.
He manages to keep the location control archetype. He kind of is the cornerstone of that location control deck. Should we talk about the art a little bit?
Yeah, let's go for the art.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
I like what they did with it. I mean, it's definitely early core set by the design of it, but I actually like the mustiness and the darkness given from the forest, where he's actually looking at what looks to be animal tracks. It actually gives that surreal vibe.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I actually like this art because I always felt like the Dunedain were kind of these like hazy figures as they were protecting the Shire and things like that. So like, this is one of those where that type of art where it's not clean crisp lines or anything. It's not like Tactics Eowyn, which is such an in your face sort of like, this bold. Is phenomenal, right? Bold. This I feel like matches what the card is doing. The Northern Tracker is just kind of trying to blend into the surroundings. And, and like, this is one of those, in my opinion, like art that matches what the card is. Now that said, I've seen this art for 10 years now, so it's like, again, I don't love this card because of its art. We'll say that, but I do appreciate this art on this card because I think it matches up really well with what I kind of envisioned what a Dunedain is. So should we ring this guy?
Yeah, let's ring it.
Okay, so maybe you're new, maybe you forgot, but we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we ring a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card to rule them all, or a very good card in the game. 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made, or not a very good card in the game. So I think I went first last time. So Grant, I'll let you ring Northern Tracker first. What do you think of the Northern Tracker?
After everything we've said and everything that we've discussed, I'm giving it a 3 rings.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I want to pull the trigger on a 2 because it's just that good, but I think that this card doesn't make it into a ton of decks just because there's other ways to kind of deal with locations. But this card is is still the best, in my opinion, the best card to deal with lots of locations in multiplayer. Like, this is the card that you're just going to include in decks. So I think I'm going to have to give it a 3 because it's that good. If it were, I don't even know, I mean, we talked about ways to make this card better, make the decision a little bit better. We talked about some attach. I don't know. This card is just really well designed and I really like it. It's not a staple, but it's a really well designed core set card. So I will agree with you and stick to a 3. So there we have it. And again, just like last week, I hope that Matt agrees with us because, I always think that Matt has some good insight over at the blog. So, anyways, there you have it. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you again next week.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.